Hi, y'all. I'm Jo, your host and cannabis lifestyle guide. And we are having a morning smoke sesh with Marie Montmarquet of MD Numbers. Thank
Good
you
morning, Jo.
for hanging out. Yeah. And your podcast will be airing next week. And one of the things that I didn't ask you that I want to know today as we get going is what the hell MD Numbers means. So
That is a great question. It was funny, like we were needing a name for the umbrella corporation that kind of like all of our companies would flow into so we could explain it easier in some ways. And we were throwing around all these different names. And I'm in San Francisco. There's a very, very like eclectic, creative, but like next level movement kind of surrounding this one rapper named his name is Larry, Uncle Larry. Larry June is his name, and he's like not super developed, but he has a boba shop. He sells sneakers, like he has his own shoe, he has his own juices. Like he's just like very organic is another one of his like phrases. He'll be like organic, and so numbers. Numbers is one of his phrases. And when I was thinking of different names, I was like, MD Numbers. It all goes so well because, we want to do numbers, meaning we want to sell a lot of weed. We want to be able to take this and make it bigger and bigger. But at the same time, it's so like culturally ingrained in the Bay Area. Like if you know kind of thing. Like not everybody knows Larry June, but the people that do know Larry June, it's a very like eclectic kind of like.
Right on. Yeah. All right. Feel, just a slightly bit cooler now that I know that, because I was like, I don't get it. I'm trying to figure out the correlation.
Just know that Larry has no idea that I named my business after him. But one day I'm going to let him know for sure.
I love it. So what legal cannabis flower from California did you bring to the party today?
To the party, I'm partnering with some Seed Junkie Genetics, one of my favorite companies out here. This specifically is a purple octane strain, and they're one of my favorite cultivators for sure.
Right on. I have some Gary Payton that was a friend's indoor grow, and I have a lot of it. So when you have a lot of something, then you're like, yeah, let's roll a shit ton of joints with this.
Heck yeah.
So, and it's also a really like soft flower, so it grinds really easy. And then when you start, playing with it's malleable.
That is the key, man.
Yes.
Easy to roll.
So I know you're not a typical joint roller, but you prefer the blunt action. But thank you for doing it my way first, and then we can get into your way later.
I love it. One day I do tell my fiance, she's funny. She's like, one day are you going to stop smoking blunts? Are you going to start smoking? I'm like, one day I could see my life going along that trajectory. But today, honey, is not the day.
But during this smoke sesh, you're giving in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I got to keep my skills versatile, right?
That's right. You've got a rep to protect. So which of the OCB papers are you going to roll with today?
I think I'm going to roll. I know I'm probably better at stuffing a cone, but I do want to roll something. So I'm going to go with the organic hemp. I did have a question though. I'm not super schooled on the difference between the bamboo and the hemp.
Well, I will tell you from my experience that for me, it's mostly just the texture. And so for a newbie, the bamboo, I feel like when I'm kind of trying to make that turn where you're starting to roll it up, that there's some sort of texture about the bamboo that it's a touch easier for me to work with. So I think it really gets pretty nuanced, and you know, variety is the
Always
spice of
wondered,
life. So let's
right?
just try them all, right?
Yeah. I just know the rice paper, and we got the unbleached everything. That's the best. Just I need to learn more about papers one day.
Well, the OCB story is pretty cool. I mean, they've been doing this for over 100 years,
Oh my gosh.
and you know,
And it's
they
from Amsterdam?
in France, Perpignan, France, I believe is where like they have their hemp fields, and their paper is made in a factory that's powered by 100% green energy, and
Love that.
yeah, so it's fun.
Very fun. Very fun. One time when I was in, Barney's, I guess, before they went out of business, and they were doing that whole high life area inside the department store. And there was an area for like really, really high end ashtrays or matches. And they had some French papers in there. And I always was like, wow, what are these? Like,
Yeah, that was pretty trippy to see a high-end department store, um, selling the, you know, cannabis accoutrement, but it
right.
also kinda made me throw up in my mouth a little bit, like, "Okay, you know, there's people in prison right now that
Oh,
you
yeah.
want us to pay
Oh,
$200 for an ashtray that says, you know,
oh, yeah. And it was
whatever."
interesting too because it was synced in with a delivery service and this and that. And you're like, oh man, you guys are, this is a wraparound service if I've ever seen one right
Yes.
inside the mall.
Yeah, right. Okay, so tell me, when did you first start rolling joints?
I was smoking my first, so I was a big athlete in high school. Not like I was really good or anything, but I was just like a bit of a nerd, and all my friends were nerds, and we weren't really big in extracurriculars outside of nerd things. So I didn't really partake that much in high school. I had my toke of my first bowl in high school, definitely my first joint in high school. And then probably like just didn't really entertain it too much until I went to college and started really learning that I loved cannabis right around my sophomore year.
You know, that's funny because I too was an athlete and a nerd, and I didn't even try cannabis until my sophomore year in college. Yeah,
Yep, that's super similar. Like,
I had
and
shit
in
to
Tennessee, it's not
do.
like
I
the
had
weed was good.
responsibilities. I had scholarships to
Right,
get.
right, literally. And then in Tennessee, it's not like the weed was good. Like the weed I remember in high school, it was funny. I remember teaching my friends this in college. Or like, yeah, this is a trick to get rid of all the seeds. All you have to do is hold your tray up like this, and you just keep on going like this, and all the seeds will eventually just roll to the bottom. And I'm like, yeah, this weed was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I to see weed that was actually green and had the shape of a flower, was amazing to me. I was like, you know, used to that brickweed that, you know, got scraped off and thrown in a baggie.
Like we were lucky if we saw popcorn, like popcorn mids. This is crazy. What is this? Green, but totally same experience. And then when I was in my sophomore year, I remember my friends just gave me a bunch of like once again really not good weed. And I sat there with joints and I sat there with blunts, and they were like, "You just figure it out. Just keep on rolling till you figure it out."
Yeah. So what did you figure out? What's some hot tips that you have for newbies?
Number one, oh man, whew, huge things. Airflow, always key. But two is like one thing I can always tell, especially for joints, like I like to roll to the point where like, not sure if you can see here, but to the point where almost where it would stay together even if the paper wasn't on it, like the flour,
Mhm.
because packing it in a very consistent, tight manner, but not too tight, gives you that consistent burn. And it does like, it's not going to go out as often. It's just going to have like a really nice cherry to it. Like that's where I start no matter what, is just making sure that the flour in there. I like to keep it a little chunky, which is a little awkward. I'd say joints, you're usually like, it's weird, right? Sometimes people just pulverize it. And then
That
other times it's like they leave it a little thick. So I like mine not where I'm like, even if there's a crutch or if there is no crutch, I try to leave like a little bit of meat on the bone.
You know, it's interesting that you say that last week. Well, shit, the last episode. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done one of these. Um, that was one of the lessons that I learned from one of the ganjiers was to grind it as little as possible. You just kind of want to break it up, but don't destroy all of the terpenes um, and just break up the flour to that point. So anyway, what you're saying, you know, paces with what the pros have told me.
That makes me
Um,
feel good.
and I haven't rolled several in a while. So as we're talking, I'm rolling multiple ones, so I have them for the day because that's one of the things about rolling your own joints. If you're like running out the door and you haven't rolled any, then you're like, shit.
Oh yeah.
What am I
And
going to have on the road?
what's your opinion on those little like joint roll machines?
Well, I have one in a little display case over here. Um, I got it back when I lived in Austin and I wanted to attempt at rolling joints. And so it was like, it works. But
Sometimes a little
it's,
like too tight, maybe. Or you
yeah,
feel like it's pretty
I
good.
just felt like it was, it's good in a pinch if you don't know what you're doing. But yeah, the art of actually
Quick.
touching the flour and rolling it in your hands, and you just get a little bit more acquainted with it. You're
Right.
developing your relationship.
Absolutely, right? And I usually roll crutchless. One, because I leave the weed pretty thick, but two, I do, and this could like I have all personal opinions. Okay, disclaimer: these are all my personal opinions. I have no clue, what the science says, but I do know that the crutch tends to like take away some of the THC and it'll stick to the crutch. But for me, it changes the flavor a little bit. Even like a glass tip sometimes to me will change like the taste versus a joint or another type of smoking. So I got mine rolled,
Interesting.
but I'm tipless.
Okay, I actually have gone tipless, no crutch lately. Because mine, it's the airflow thing
Yeah,
is, I kind of roll them a little bit loose because I'm not amazing at this yet. And so the airflow can just be a little too much, like taking a bong rip when
yeah.
you're just wanting to, take a puff and pass.
All about the airflow, right? Because too loose, it's like you're not tasting the flour, you're not getting a good hit. But too tight, you're like getting a headache. Trying to like pull the air out of there, and it's so tight. There's definitely like I always dry hit too, like see it, like test my airflow before I light it. So I'm like just inhaling through like the
Hmm.
joint to make sure that I have the proper airflow.
And the other good thing about doing that, what you just said, is that you also get to actually taste the flower. Like you can, you get the notes of the different terpenes that are in there. And so, it's just like a nice little appreciation for the flower before you burn it.
Oh yeah, when you're with the real smokers when they roll the joint, they're like, "Dry hit that, man, taste that." You're like, "Oh my god!" They're like you. I mean, it is definitely something that I love doing. Like I gotta dry hit it, see what it tastes like, taste the terps.
Right on. Well, I also love my little um, roach clip.
Oh yeah. No.
Um, just makes it a little more.
Look how like stoner my roach clip is. Like, tell me if this isn't anyway. 1990s smoke shop.
That's pretty fun.
It's good. I love it. Did I tell you the story about Dare?
Oh my gosh, no.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I tell this story too much, but I've realized people repeat themselves because you only have one life, right? This is what happened to you when you grew up. When I was in fifth or sixth grade, I was in Dare, like most kids, and I got the Spirit Award for being the most excited kid to say no to drugs in my class. And one day I went home and I was like a candy holic when I was little. Like I was always eating candy. I went in my mom's room and I was looking for change, and I lifted up this candle she had, and underneath it was like a roach in a clip, and I about had a heart attack. Like thank God I wasn't one of those kids that like called the police on their parents, because Dare doesn't teach you crack is different from marijuana or cannabis or any of these things. How do I not have a lighter? I'm hilarious. um, so when my mom came home, so in between there, I go into the living room where my brother is, my much older brother. He's like 7.5 years older than me. I'm like, Mom's on drugs. He's like, she's not on drugs. Like, it's fine. I'm like crying. I'm like, in my head, I couldn't understand why it wasn't that big of a deal to him. But then I went and I found his anatomy book, and then my mom came home and I was like lecturing her, like pulled out the tobacco page, the drug page, like every drug page. Like I'm explaining to her how this ruins families. It was like a real intervention. Now look at me.
That's right. Now, what does your mom think about that?
She laughs. That's definitely one of the funniest moments. And she's like, yeah, I tried to blame it on your uncle. I was like, yeah, it didn't work, Mom. But I didn't know at that time that my family loved cannabis.
Well, when I was a girl, my parents had divorced when I was 3, and so when I would go visit my mom, she had one of those, like, little brass incense tins on her coffee table,
Mm-hmm.
and it always had, like, a different smell to it, and I would open it up, and there would always be little roaches in there, and her roach clip, I would, put it in my hair and shit,
I love it.
not knowing, but then, later on being like, "Oh, okay. These are
Mm-hmm.
funny cigarettes."
Literally. Especially when you were in what state did you grow up
In
in?
Texas.
In Texas. That's what I thought. It's like you were in
Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah.
Man. The things you learn.
Oh,
Even my
yeah.
mom now, she works for the feds, so she cannot smoke yet. But when she retires, she is all about it.
How long has she had that job?
Man, like 10 years now. She used to
Oh, God.
own some businesses, and then she sold them, and then was bored, and then she went to work for the government.
I cannot imagine giving up my relationship with cannabis for a job. Oh,
Sure. I've only taken I used to have this life like motivating goal, and that was to never take a drug test. And then when I moved to California and I quit working with the original company I was working with, I got a new job. And the first thing they did after the guy hired me, he's like, "We want you to work here, Marie." And then he printed out the drug test paperwork for me to go take this drug test. And I was like, I remember someone saying something about some fake pee.
yeah.
I did all the research. I bought multiple types of fake pee, and that is how I passed the one and only drug test I've ever had to take in my life.
I've only had to take one drug test as well. It was because I was working for a radio station, and in case you have to drive a station vehicle, they make you test, and I did the whole niacin flush and drank one of those disgusting ass drinks, like, right before you go in or whatever you're supposed to do.
Yep.
But yeah, I was like, I don't ever want to have a job that drug tests me again.
See, the niacin is so interesting too. When I was in college, I hung out with a lot of athletes, and they were all smoking weed, and they were all on like niacin doses that you could never even dream of, like nothing normal, right? Like they're just sitting there like sweating, itching, sweating, itching before they have a drug test. I'm just like, this is crazy.
Yeah, the things we do. But this is our medicine. And so I'm like, okay, I will defend this relationship,
Oh yeah.
by any means necessary.
It was really cool being in New York, because New York is literally on that cusp where a lot of people were not able to participate in cannabis, even though they loved cannabis, because they drug tested so much at work. And now they're finally changing those rules. And I met a lot of people that were just like, this is going to be life changing for me. And I met someone last time that was just like, well, I've lost so many good jobs. Like, just I didn't go that route when I could have, because I refused to not have this relationship with this plant, therefore sacrificing the best jobs that she could ever have.
Yeah.
I'm like, girl, I had to get the fake pee.
Well, I just was like, I've got to go live somewhere where cannabis is legal and I can be myself. Where the fuck is that? And I'm like, okay, California, here I come.
It's crazy
And
too because my only drug test was in California, but the company that I
that's so
worked
weird.
for was based out of Ardmore, Pennsylvania, and they had these very antiquated Pennsylvanian rules. So it's like even though they were in California and I was in California, I was still under,
Yeah.
different antiquated BS laws from this other company.
All right. So I know that you typically are not a regular joint smoker, and I appreciate you playing with me. S-
I
but
rolled this a little too tight, I will say.
you did well. This one's pretty good, but I never can get through a whole joint without having to relight it. I'm not that good.
And yo, no, me either. And I'm so anal about the drag. Like it has to be even. Like in my friends, if I'm smoking with my friends, I'm got like one of those people that have like huge lungs and no consciousness of the blunt, and they burn half of the blunt, like run half of the side of the blunt. I'm like, you cannot smoke with me anymore. Like
Yeah,
you, like that is like ultimate abuse to my plant. Like you can,
yeah.
so I'm constantly relighting it to like keep it on that same even.
The one thing I will say about rolling with these OCB papers is that I always have an even burn. Even, it doesn't happen when I'm smoking a pre-roll or something. You always have to be paying attention to that um but with these I don't tend to find that. So kudos OCB.
I actually
Um
don't dislike these at all. These are pretty good. Though, what one did I do? Organic hemp. I like it because it doesn't burn white flakes. You know what I mean? Like some joint papers, like the ashes flake off and they're more like, it has a little bit to do with how tight it is sometimes, right? But like this actually burns, like similar to a blunt because it's not so loose and it's not like flaking.
mhm.
It's in one straight, yeah.
I'm just over here looking at these comments, and C's 180 says glass tips allow you to taste the flavor more. I think it's due to the resin sticking to the glass and it reheats every time you take a hit. I have some glass tips in my shopping cart that I haven't purchased yet. I had that was some advice someone had given me on a previous show. But I haven't used the glass tips yet.
Glass tips are cool. I'm not against them. I'm not necessarily for them either, but it's also
Yeah.
like you have to re-clean them every time you use them. They get disgusting after they use them one time, so you have to keep them clean. And I don't know. Once again, it's total preference. Like me, I like nothing in between me and the Turk. Like
Yeah.
even if it's just glass, I can't necessarily say that for my palate because everybody's different. I'm crazy. Like I'll tell you, I like the flavor in a blunt more than a flavor in a joint. So like you could tell I'm not a purist. So you don't take this from purity, but for me, I'm not necessarily like even on a joint. I don't even on a blunt rather. I don't prefer any sort of crutch.
So
But
when you're rolling blunts, what are you using? Because I know you use the whole leaf, right?
yeah, I'm using the Bronx leaf. Right now, I'm in the grab a gang, the grab a leaf
Put that a
style.
little closer to the screen. I didn't see the label. Okay. Right
Yes,
on.
these are pretty decent. They could be more consistent. I do have my complaints, but um, they're good.
So talk to me about the art of rolling a blunt. Because back in the college days, you just get the swisher, cut it out, replace it, seal it back up. But this is
Right?
not what you're doing.
No, I mean, like, man, it's crazy. Like, I definitely feel that part of the experience of cannabis being like really soothing mentally and like physically is the rolling part. Like if you were to just hand me an already done blunt and that was the only or joint and that was the only way that I was able to participate in cannabis, I would be incredibly sad because I really do like to roll my own blunts. So I just think that it's super spiritual in a way to get like that true understanding of the best way to roll the flower. So yeah, for first things first, like what we were talking about, leaving the flower a little chunky is one of the keys. Making sure that there's not super finely ground cannabis in the blunt. You want a little bit of meat on the bone. With these leaves in particular, pretty much like you said, Joe, earlier, you have to be careful. Like pieces of each leaf are going to be more ideal than other pieces. Some are going to have more veins in them. Some are going to have less veins in them. The goal is to always keep the vein in the middle, though. So imagine when you're sealing, you would like the vein to be horizontal. So
I think you and I were talking about that off air. So these are like full tobacco leaves, and whenever I was talking with a guy about these, the leaf is really big, and so you're gonna get how many blunts out of one of these leaves?
man, on a full, when you buy the full leaf, depends on how big you roll your blunts, but let's say 10 to 20. Like
Yeah.
depending on if you're doing little guys or king size guys. And then the ones that come in this package, it's interesting because the leaf is called frontu, but a grabba, the definition I believe of the grabba is just a cut of the frontu. So a cut of the leaf is a grabba. So this is kind of a older example that I have. You can kind of see like the vein in the middle of that right there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would want that to be in the middle because you want the north and south to be really sealable. And I always cut the paper to make it extremely even, give myself the best chance for success on the seal. It's so funny. I wrote a standard operating procedure for my fiance because I was like,
About this?
she doesn't smoke.
You're hilarious.
She doesn't smoke, but I was like, man, we're gonna be together.
I would like you to send that to me.
I will. I have literally so many things. I know it's in my office. I have to find it, and it's literally got like photos of exactly like how to seal, what to focus on. Like we were talking about making sure that all of the flour is tightly put together in that nice little cylinder, so you can have the most chance for success, even on the seal happening. It's funny. She's pretty good at it. She's pretty good at it.
You're like, I can't be the only one in this house that knows how to roll a good blunt.
No. And then I told her, you always have to do the check at the end, your final check, where you're basically like shaking it, making sure nothing comes out the front, nothing comes out the back, make sure you have decent tightness. Yeah, she's pretty good at it.
Right on. Okay, and the one thing that I will say, if you can get like, 20 blunts out of one of those leaves, how in the hell do you keep that thing stored so it stays moisturized or so that it's malleable to work with?
Dries out so fast. That's one reason like pre-rolling this style of leaf or even like a backwood is really hard because it just turns crunchy so fast. And the moment it turns crunchy, where the lighter hits, it just wants to unravel, right? So you never get that seal again, which is so crucial. And even like holes, oh my gosh, utter pet peeve, holes. But for freshness, they come in a pouch that's resealable when you buy the big leaves. It definitely is going to lose freshness. I will take it out and kind of like wrap it in a damp paper towel and then kind of like put it back in the pouch. So kind of like refreshing the moisture, but not leaving the moisture in the bag because that will create mold. Like,
Yeah. Do those Bovida packs or, those two-way humidifier things, do those things work?
I've never tried one of those for the leaf, but I can't.
I say that's a good experiment.
Yeah, we definitely need to try that.
Do it.
We need to try that. I got to get a little Bovida.
Right on. Now, let's see what do we have other? I don't see any other questions or comments. But if you haven't ordered your OCB rolling supplies, you can go to ocbusa.com/baked. You'll get 4 booklets of OCB rolling papers, and a rolling tray for only $4.99. The bundle's worth $20, and if you put that in someone's stocking this year, you would be the hero of Christmas. At least in our little cannabis
Right,
world.
right. These are good. These are good papers.
Right
Right.
on. Now, if people want to learn more about you, they can listen to next week's podcast, where we do a little bit of a deep dive on your origin story. But on social, where do people find you?
Thank you so much, Joe, for having me. It is MD Numbers Inc. on Instagram, and we have mdfarms.ca on Instagram as well. And our website is mdnumbersinc.com.
Right on. Well, thank you everybody for hanging out, and hopefully it won't be so long until we meet again for another episode of Roll With Me.
I like it. Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah, cheers.